Welcome to the third video on the series using social media as an academic. In this third video, we are going to discuss the results from a recent questionnaire, a recent survey on researchers about their use of social media. So we are going to see how the situation is going and which platforms are their most preferred, their favorite ones. So in 2017, Springer Nature conducted a survey on people visiting their websites, asking if they were researchers, if they were active researchers, and they asked plenty of questions about using social media. If you go to the slides, you are going to find the link there, so you can read on your own the results and the analysis. The thing is that from that survey, we can get plenty of interesting information. First of all, academics are quite well aware of social media and the different platforms that they can use. Among the most popular platforms, that is, the most well-known platforms, they have ResearchGate, LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, Academia.edu, Pinterest, Snapchat, and blogs. The thing is that even the most well-known platform, which is ResearchGate, was only known to about 3/4 of those people that were surveyed, and 40% of them didn't consider important to have an online social media presence. Okay, so we're going to go later with all of this. So if you don't know what ResearchGate is, don't worry. Uh, 1/4 of researchers don't know it. Regarding their professional use, that is, people saying that yes, I'm using social media for research or for professional purposes, ResearchGate was the most used one. 62% of people were using it. LinkedIn is quite surprisingly quite used. And I found really surprising to find that only 42% of researchers had a Google Scholar profile. So I'm going to insist on that later, but you need a Google Scholar profile, okay? We'll see how we can create a Google Scholar profile. Only 28% of researchers were using academia.edu. Don't worry about that, because I'm not going to recommend you using that. It's very surprising that less than 1/3 of researchers are using ORCID. It's crucial from my point of view. And it's really surprising that only 20% of researchers have a personal website, because I think it's critical to have that. Regarding the use of Facebook, Twitter, and blogs, well, it's not really worrisome. The numbers, the figures are quite low, but it's not really surprising. The thing is that we shouldn't confuse using something with having an online presence. So I went through the data, because that 13% of users of blogs doesn't mean that they are writing, they are keeping a blog. It means that they are reading a blog. 73% of those using blogs were actually reading. Okay? So when I'm talking about using social media, when I'm talking about YouTube, when I'm talking about podcasts, when I'm talking about blogs, when I'm talking about websites, I'm not meaning you reading them. I'm meaning you producing them. Okay? So the thing is that if we go on with the survey, there were plenty of reasons to use social media. The first one is that other people they know, colleagues, peers, and friends, were doing it yet. So my advice here is that if you have anyone in your close circle that are who is using social media uh, as a professional tool, watch them, ask them for advice, because it's going to be really useful for you. Some people, a rather important amount, created an account because they needed to read content. For instance, I mentioned that I quit SlideShare because I don't want people to subscribe to a script in order to read my slides. Okay, so that's a reason for some people, and of course that increases the number of social media users, but it's a bad idea to force people to subscribe or to create an account. A rather important amount of researchers, almost a third, were creating a social media account to join a network. That's a really important reason. Don't consider networking as something that is wrong or bad. It's crucial for you, so it's a very, very good reason to join social media, to grow a network, to weave a collaboration network. A rather important amount, a quarter, was out of curiosity, and it's interesting that 15% of them were doing that because they were asked for their institution. That's, from my experience, not the most common thing. Institutions asking you to have a social media presence. And finally, another 15% were there or were telling the surveyors that they already had a personal account, and so they just started using the account for professional purposes. The thing is that different platforms are used for different uses. As I said in the previous video, not every platform can be exchanged with any other platform. You can do very similar things, but they are focused on different contents and different activities. So that's not wrong. What's wrong is because you have just focused on one single platform, you are just doing what that platform is focused on. So after we discuss the different platforms that are out there, I'm going to tell you what's, from my point of view, the minimum amount of tools that you have to use to have a real, active, meaningful, and useful for you online presence. Okay, so the thing is that ResearchGate was used mainly to share content and self-promotion. LinkedIn was used for self-promotion and networking. Interestingly, you can use ResearchGate for networking. And interestingly, you can use LinkedIn to share content. Academia.edu was used mainly to discover and reading content, which is interesting because it's very similar to ResearchGate, and it's being used for different things. Institutional websites were mainly used for self-promotion. That's nice to see that, because this means that these people were actually producing, keeping their own websites. They were not saying, I'm using websites for reading content. So yes, websites, personal websites, are great for self-promotion, for increasing your visibility. So yes, you need a website. Those using Facebook were using it to share, discover, and read content. Blogs, quite unfortunately, were mainly used to discover and read content, not to publishing content, which is a great way of using a blog. And Twitter was one of the most versatile platforms. As you may see, different platforms are used for different things, usually two, maybe three things, but Twitter was very versatile. For those using it, that 15% of researchers, because they could use it to discover and read content, to comment and debate with other people, to share content, and to do self-promotion. So when I'm telling you, you should really embrace and use Twitter, it means that it's very, very versatile and it's very easy to start with it. So we are going to go back to Twitter again and again. Unfortunately, those that were sharing content, they were not the majority, they were just trying to address other academics, usually in their same area of knowledge. So the thing is that instead of increasing your audience, trying to reach the general public, most researchers are just trying to preach to the choir. Okay, so yes, that's nice, but you can increase a little bit the diversity in your audience. So the thing is that based on this survey, we can look the glass and think it's half full or it's half empty. If you are positive, you're rather optimistic, and you think the glass is half full, you may decide on focusing this. Yes, 70% of academics know some social media platform. That's nice. They are aware of the modern world. 60% of them find it important to have a social media presence. That's nice too. And up to 6%, 60% of them use some social media platform. Please remember that some of those uses is for reading and consuming content. So this is good. Okay, this is good. You're not going to be a weird person by using social media in academia. Okay, but if you're not so positive, if you're a little bit pessimistic, and you watch at the glass and you think it's half empty, the thing is that 30% of academics don't know any social media platform. That's not a small number. In 2017, the year of the survey, 40% of them don't find it important to have a social media presence. This number is going to be crucial, because this means that if you decide to use social media as an academic for professional purposes, you're going to find quite a bunch of people that don't think that makes sense. Okay, and they are going to let you know about that. We're going to discuss that. And using social media for professional reasons is still in the minority. Only 40% of people have a Google Scholar profile. You need a Google Scholar profile. I'm going to tell you how to create one. Only 30% of them use ORCID. You need an ORCID profile, okay? And only 20% have a website. You also need to have a website. All of this, which is in the minority, you need all of them, 3 of them. We're going to discuss that. 50% use Twitter. Yes, okay, in comparison with the other numbers, this is not a huge problem, okay? Even though we think Twitter is extremely useful, I'm going to encourage you to use Twitter. The other 3 platforms are much, much more important. Or at least, if you have to choose to keep something for later, keep Twitter for later. You need the Google Scholar profile, you need an ORCID profile, and you need a website. And social media is used mainly to consume rather than to produce content, which makes sense because most users in social media, most users in online platforms do that, consuming and not producing. But please take into account that we're talking about researchers. The problem we have here is that we work in a publish or perish mentality. We're continuously trying to write things while trying to avoid reading other people's things. And the thing is that in social media, we're not producing content. That's weird. Okay? So all of this, in addition to not trying to get a diverse audience, are bad news. Okay? They are bad news. Now, with this, I'm finishing this 3rd video. In the next one, we're going to discuss some of the reasons that people in the 40% of social media is not important are going to give you, so you don't use social media either. Okay, so we're going to discuss that. We're going to provide the bank for all of those reasons, and we're going to see that those reasons are wrong, and you need an answer to say, no, you're wrong with that, and I'm going to use social media, because using social media is not just something which is fashionable, it's something that it's going to be useful for your career.